Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. I like talking about history, and although today I'm not going to be talking about history, I'm going to be talking about emergency evaluation petitions, the abuse of emergency evaluation petitions by Africans. Emergency evaluation petitions, of course, are important right now, considering the tragic events of April 16, 2026, when uh, there was a murder suicide when the former lieutenant governor of Virginia, Justin Fairfax, murdered his wife and subsequently took his own life. Something that I've raised is considering he was spiraling, the mental crisis he was going through. If family or people close to him had noticed, even neighbors, then an emergency petition could have, averted, what happened. It could have precluded the uh, unfortunate murder suicide. Again, it's like, yeah, me playing Monday morning quarterback. But in Virginia, it's called emergency custody order. And then, uh, but that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to focus on Maryland. So in Maryland, of course, I was also subjected to an abuse of an emergency evaluation petition by a lunatic Jide Iwariri, Howard University professor Jide Iwariri. Um, an emergency evaluation petition, again, in the state of Maryland, I guess different states vary because it violates your constitutional rights. It's used only for people who have severe mental illness, right? That's a requirement, right? So you have to know that that person has a mental illness, and the way you know is they take medication, they have a history of hospitalization. I've talked about my situation, right? I had no history of hospitalization. I had no diagnosed mental illness. I had no mental illness. I was not a threat. This guy Jide just fabricated the whole thing. He was able to abuse an emergency evaluate, get one. An emergency evaluation petition approved because apparently, from what I learned, he knew the judge that approved it. The judge who approved a poorly written emergency evaluation petition that didn't show probable cause, Judge BBM Berry. Apparently, she graduated from the university where he's been a professor for over 40 years or so. And, I learned, that he knew that the judge knew him well. He knew, they knew each other well. And so the judge abused her authority. She abused her authority. That's judicial misconduct. But I'm learning that Maryland is a very, very corrupt state. And so this is something that, I filed a judicial misconduct complaint against her. But and Jide Warrior, of course, my family's filed a complaint against him in Nigeria. But Jide Warrior is not the only one who abuses emergency evaluation petition, apparently in Maryland. Apparently, throughout the process, as I've gone through this process, I would learn from psychiatrists because I discovered that there are many Nigerian psychiatrists who practice in Maryland. Interestingly, I mean, I already knew that. My aunt is actually a psychiatrist. She's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. That means she can diagnose, she can treat. She's also a lawyer. She has a law degree. She doesn't practice law. Um, but she's actually my blood aunt, right? So she is able to diagnose, and there are many nice psychiatrists here in the state of Maryland who practice in Maryland and in America generally. And I would learn that apparently um, many Nigerians abuse emergency evaluation petition. They use it as a tool to punish their children, right? Because in America, corporal punishment is not allowed. Uh, Parents can go to jail, be arrested for for hitting, for beating their children and things like that. And it happens. Many kids, uh, African kids, are known to call cops on their parents if they hit them and things like that. And then the parents get into trouble. So the the trick parents have used, to get around that is to apparently file, emergency evaluation petitions to get their kids hospitalized in psychiatric hospitals and say, well, their kids are struggling with mental or behavioral health problems, and so psychological or emotional problems. Of course, that only leads to it's a precipitous path that only ends up harming their kids in the long term. But I heard Nigerians are not the worst abusers of emergency evaluation petitions. I understand Ethiopians are the worst, right? I don't have the data, but this was something Ethiopians told me because I started investigating this issue, and Ethiopians told me that it's a very common practice in the Ethiopian American communities here, because that they're more authoritarian. I mean, African parents are normally authoritarian with their kids anyway. Um, Interestingly, I was never, I wasn't beaten by my own parents growing up because I grew up in Nigeria. But this lunatic Jide Warire, I remember once he telling me that, at 40 that I'm his child. I think he was delusional because he would refer to me as his child. His wife would say I should call him daddy, that I should be calling him daddy. His wife apparently there's information on the internet that says she went missing at some point and she was probably in the early stages of Alzheimer's. You can see she struggles with dementia, right? You can see she shows signs of dementia. I don't know how far it is, if it's diagnosed or whatever, because there was a time she had told me that a long time that she has some kind of mental problem or she doesn't know what it is. So you can see she has some kind of she struggles with something. And her husband clearly is delusional because he goes to file a fabricated petition. But that's not what I want to focus on today. I've done many videos talking about that, and I'll probably do more videos just saying who Jide Wari is. Clearly no kin of mine, right? No kin of mine, and no sponsor of mine. But he's a bit delusional, and I have to clarify that. But my concern is the abuse of the African child in the state of Maryland and in America. Because of the experience I had, I know that I'm going to try and, once I've gotten, this whole whatever over with, um, I will try and get with people in Nigeria and Africa to make sure that people who are abusing the rights of the African child in America, in the West, that there will be a way that we can get them extradited back to Nigeria, wherever it is, and have them criminally prosecuted. Because when the way these kids are treated, their kids, when they're emergency petitioned, I learned that kids are emergency petitioned, uh, kids as under the age of 12, and they're handcuffed by police officers, and then they are force treated, they are force medicated, right? They're force medicated, oftentimes with, treating illnesses, mental illnesses that they don't have, simply because their parents are fibbing, they're lying maliciously, and they want a way to be able to punish their kids, right? And this is not the sort of situation that we grew up in Nigeria, where I come from, right? So I'm going to focus more on the details of Africans abusing emergency evaluation petitions to punish their kids in America because they can't beat them, they can't punish them uh, the way they are free to do back in Africa. So I'm going to do that, focus on that later on. But right now, I want to look at some statistics. The state of Maryland is particularly barbaric. There's a county called Wacomico, right? Uh, and they abuse these emergency evaluation petitions in schools. They've used them about 117 times in a year. They said since the past 8 years, they've handcuffed kids from schools, right? Uh, for the past 8 years, as many as 750 times. And The process is they handcuff them, kids as young as 5 years old, in schools, and they send them to psychiatric hospitals, right? Kids that are 5 years old for little infractions. Now, you imagine emergency evaluation petition is used for people with a severe mental illness and who are a danger. They pose a threat to their lives or the lives of others. So they need to be homicidal or suicidal. How is a 5 year old being homicidal? Right? A 5 year old being homicidal in school. Do they have a gun? That's not the case. Apparently, the article I read keeps using the term misuse. Misuse means something that's unintentional, right? Done out of ignorance. But no, abuse is the word. Abuse means something that's done maliciously, right? Using something in a malicious way, it's intentional. So, Wicomico County, Maryland, they've been abusing these emergency petitions. And of course, the greatest incidence is amongst black kids. Wicomico County has less than a third black people, less than a third of the population are blacks, right? But these emergency evaluation petitions, um, black kids are, black kids, it's used on the black kids half of the time, right? Half of the people that get emergency petitioned through these schools, right? In Wicomico County are black kids, right? So they're using them at a disproportionate way to rate to punish black kids. And again, the process is they handcuff them. They get a police or sheriff, they come to the school and they handcuff them and put them in a police car or transporter, take them to a psychiatric hospital. These are kids that their parents, without their parents' consent, without their parents knowing, um, and they use them for little infractions. And the police, the teachers claim that well, that the kids are posing a danger to the lives of other students. 5 year old kids. They've been using them for kids under the age of 12. Right, that's very consistent in Wicomico County. Happens in other counties as well, and so it's very unfortunate. You can see how this will traumatize a child. A child just being a child. They abuse these emergency petitions for as little for minor infractions such as that the kids are not doing well in school, or they say they're acting out, and then they get a cop emergency petition them without the consent of their parents. That's clearly a violation of civil rights, and human rights. Um, it's kind of interesting, and when one looks at emergency petitions in Maryland generally, um, it's abused at a disproportionate rate for black people. Again, for black people, um, uh, in the state of Maryland, in America generally, right? Um, the prevalence of mental illness is most prevalent amongst whites, the white population, right? Whites, 57.9% of people suffering mental illness in America are, white people, 57.9%. The next about 44%, uh, that's Hispanics, right? Hispanics, and then next, Black Americans at the rate of 38.5%. Asians are lower, roughly 32.5%. Interestingly, though, as I was looking at the statistics on mental illness, interestingly, even though whites suffer mental illness at a higher rate than blacks, however, they are black men are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia than white men. So, blacks are diagnosed with schizophrenia at a 4 times higher rate than white men. Schizophrenia, of course, is a very dangerous, crazy one. That's really, really crazy. It's not one of the sexy, mental illnesses that people have, like ADHD. No, schizophrenia is yeah, like Jekyll and Hyde, crazy, really, really crazy, dangerous. Folks you don't want to be around, right? This is not me propagating sanism or mentalism, right? But in any event, it was interesting to take a look at some of these statistics. I never knew that I'd be interested in discovering mental illness diagnosis, because if there's something that I don't like, I don't care about, that's mental illness. I don't like, because if you notice, I like to study, I like to do things with my mind. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't use drugs. That's because I'm interested in a healthy mind. So because I'm interested in a healthy mind, I'm not interested in uh, psychosis, things that have to do with pathology and stuff. Those are things that I'm not interested in. But it's interesting that a crazy lunatic judge like Judge James Bonifant, a racist judge who clearly is delusional, could make fabrications, misrepresentations, taking away my constitutional rights, right? Misrepresent and defame me, right? To hold me so I could, I would be seeing be confined with people who have severe mental illness, right? Of course, it stemmed from the misrepresentations and the perjury of Jide Warere, right? Of course, Jide Warere will face legal consequences later on. But in everything, there's light. You should see light at the end of the tunnel and turn every disadvantage into some advantage. And I used the opportunity to research more on the abuses of emergency evaluation petition and abuses of psychiatry as a means to dehumanize, violate the constitutional and human rights of Black people and new African immigrants. So this is happening in America, especially in Maryland. Uh, Mental health and psychiatry is being used to rob Africans of their autonomy, their identity, their dignity, and criminalize and villainize, um, uh, new Africans and Black people in general. In any event, I will continue with this discussion later on. I just wanted to focus on the statistics, and it's appalling. Maryland is not the only place that abuses emergency evaluation petitions for kids. Florida is notorious. Thousands of kids are sent, are emergency petitions. Kentucky, many different states, even New York City, surprisingly. So Black kids, and of course, Black kids are the ones who experience the brunt of this abuse. It's unfortunate that so Blacks escaped slavery, from slavery to Jim Crow, and now it's mental health institutionalization, right? Using false diagnosis to rob Black identity and their autonomy, especially kids. So next time we see a Black kid who made it all the way to college and graduated from college, we need to really applaud them because they had to jump through, pass through the jungle of the evil, the vile classroom to prison pipeline, classroom to psychiatric institution pipeline that's been designed to dehumanize Black kids in, for instance, the barbaric state of Maryland. My name is Oluroti Milsha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.